Hey everyone, I'm your host Jordan Banderas, and this is the Bad Influence Podcast. But before we get started, don't forget to smash the subscribe or follow button so you don't miss out on any episodes. So let's get started. So recently, my wife and I bought a house. It was actually in July. And what happens when you make a big purchase like that? It could be a car, a house. You did something big for yourself. Well, people are always gonna tell you why what you did is wrong, right? We've been receiving a lot of feedback from that, from people close to us, our families. A lot of people are saying that because right now there's a lot of talk about the housing market crashing, which I mean, nobody knows when it's gonna happen, if it is even gonna happen. But even if it happens, we will be okay because when we bought this house, when we were going through the whole process, which was a nightmare, we looked into our finances. We were like, okay, can we afford it? Can we actually do this? And because rents are actually going up, we felt like it was the right thing to do for us because right now we're paying around the same amount that we were gonna pay for an apartment, and we have a bigger space. We have the same actually we have more rooms now. We have 3 bedrooms, and an apartment we were renting for 2, and we were gonna pay the same amount that we're paying for our house. So it was, for us, it was a no-brainer. We were like, yeah, we if we can afford it, let's get it. Now, the problem with this right now, because of how messed up the market is, for us at least, the whole process was a fucking nightmare. And that's why I want to share this with you, because if you're thinking about buying a house, just so you understand that right now it's like a fucking roller coaster, you may encounter a lot of issues. Some of the issues that we actually encountered while we were trying to buy this house is that the bank, the actual lender, didn't want to pay the sales price, even though we got the actual, the inspection and everything. Like the appraisal was like at the at a certain price. The bank was all like, no, we're gonna pay less than that. And it was a messed up situation because the seller didn't want to lower it. So we were going back and forth with the bank. The bank is like, no, we're only gonna pay this much. It doesn't matter, whatever. I didn't know they could do that, but apparently they can. So you have to be aware of that, especially around this time, because the interest rates just went up again. So the banks may be very cautious about who they're gonna loan the money to. So you have to be very aware of that. But in our situation, it was just like that. Like the bank was saying, like, no, we're gonna pay less, and then we agreed to a price, and then the bank changed it again. So in the end, it worked out for us because the bank saved us like $12,000. The seller didn't want to do that, but because we were getting into this situation where the rates were going up, we were like, well, if they want to take it, they're gonna take it. If they don't want to take it, we can just rent another apartment. So they decided to take it. We got the house, $12,000 less than what they were asking, but like I said, it was a fucking nightmare. Like, I wouldn't like to go through that process again, because after we got the house, there were a few problems with the house, which is something that's going to happen. Problems will arise in the house, even though it may be new, or if it's old especially, there's going to be problems. So you also have to think about that, because it's not like when you're renting that you will tell your landlord, hey, this is what's happening, like there's leaks or whatever, this is pretty much what you need to fix, and they will fix it sometimes. But when you buy a house, what happens is that now you have to fix the problem. You can't tell your landlord or in this case the lender or anybody to fix the problem. It's your responsibility. That's one of the things that people don't understand, and that's why people were telling us that we made the wrong decision, because it's all like they're like, what if something happens to the house? And I'm like, well, we'll just figure out a way to fix it. If we have to hire somebody, we will hire somebody, but we will deal with those problems. Because I have never owned a house. My wife has owned a house before, and she kind of understands like there will be problems. So she explained this to me while we were going through the process of buying it. It's like, hey, she was all like, hey, if something happens, we're gonna have to fix it. And I was like, yeah, we'll fix it. So that's one thing that you have to understand if you ever decide to buy a house, because it can be very stressful during the whole process. Like in my case, like I explained, like the bank was like, nope, we're gonna pay less. So the actual seller could back away or walk away and say like, no, I'm not gonna sell you the house, and then we will have to rent. Or if something happens after you move in, like it can be super stressful. And that's why if you buy a house, you have to talk to your partner, like your spouse. You guys have to come up with a plan. You guys have to come up with a plan that will find a solution. Especially when people are giving you shit like they have been giving us, because people will tell you like, oh, have you seen this? Like the rates are going up, the market is gonna crash, your house is gonna lose value. So that can be stressful to you, because you hear it all the time. You see it on the news, you see it, you hear it from your friends, your family, and wherever. But do what's best for you. Don't care about what the others are saying, because if you decide to buy a house, make sure that you use a budget. Make sure that you put everything on paper, like, okay, these are all my bills, this is how much I will have to pay for the mortgage, and I can afford it. Or if you can't, don't jump into that boat, because it will sink. Like, I used to work for a mortgage servicer, and I saw a lot of people literally not being able to afford their mortgages because they had so many bills. I'll share this with you. Like, when I was working for the mortgage servicer, and that's why when my wife and I bought this house, we sat down and we made a plan. Like, we put everything on paper. Like, this is how many bills we have, this is how much we spend per month, and this is how much we have left to be able to pay a mortgage. When we did that, we were like, okay, yeah, we can afford it. But a lot of people don't do that. They buy a house, and then they start buying other things. Like, they buy the RV, they buy the truck, they buy all these things. They buy whatever they want, which is fine. The problem is that all that debt, it starts to accumulate, and then they can't make the payments. I saw it all the time working at the mortgage servicer. People will call in asking for help, saying like, hey, how can you help me, because I can't make my payment anymore. After COVID happened, that happened too. Like, people were losing their jobs, they were not working. It happens to teachers every summer, where they're not getting paid during the summer, and they call the mortgage servicer and they're like, oh, I need a deferral for this many months, or I want to see if I qualify for some kind of assistance because I'm not getting paid. So that happens, and that's something that you need to understand too, that if you ever buy a house, your lender or whoever your servicer is for your mortgage is more interested in helping you keep the mortgage or keep the house than taking it from you. Because if they take it from you, what's going to happen is that they have to put it in the market, they have to send it into foreclosure, it has to go into court, and it's a long process, and they lose money out of it. So before you decide to lose the house or give up on the house, see if they can actually help you. There's ways to help. And another thing that I learned about the mortgage industry while I was working at the mortgage servicer, which is one of the reasons why I was like, yeah, we can buy the house, because I kind of understand what we can do in case that we get in trouble, and I understand how the mortgage servicing works. Is that, and not a lot of people know this, when you make your payment for a mortgage, you have a grace period of 15 days. So, for example, when you make your payment if your payment is due on the first of every month, you have until the 15th, you have 15 days, until the 15th to make your payment and not get an actual late fee. That's right. A lot of people don't know that. And if you're not able to make the payment even after the 15-day grace period, you still have another 15 days, so you have a whole month, so it doesn't hit your credit report, because the mortgage industry, this is per the law. That's why I'm telling you this, because I learned this while I was working at this company. When you own your mortgage, you have literally 30 days to make your payment, or it will hit your credit report. So for us, when I was working at this company, what happened is that the first of the month, the 15th of the month, and the last day of the month was the busiest days to take payments, because people wanted to make the payments on the first, or before the late fee cutoff, or before the credit reporting cutoff date. So that's one of the things that I learned, and a lot of people don't know that. So I was talking to my wife the other day about this, because we mailed the payment for the mortgage and it didn't arrive on time. So, and I was like, we won't get a late fee or anything like that, because we have the 15 days. So I was okay with it. But then it looks like the check got lost, so we made the payment online, and I was like, see, we didn't get a late fee because it wasn't listed or anything like that. We don't get a late fee until after 15 days. So that's one thing that I like about having a house, because when you're renting, and I'm talking about apartment complexes, because I have never rented somebody like a private homeowner or anything like that, but I'm talking about apartment complexes. If you rent an apartment and you don't pay your rent within, let's say, 3 or 5 days, you get an eviction notice, or you get a notice saying that you're going to get evicted within 5 days. I've seen it. When I was living at apartment complexes, and there's always the neighbor that can't afford the payment, especially now, they will get the notice within 3 or 5 days of not being able to make the payment. And I was like, that is so fucked up, because it's what if they're struggling? Well, the renters, they don't care most of the times, because what happens is that there's always going to be somebody else that can rent that apartment. There's always going to be somebody else. But when it comes to a mortgage, you have a little bit more of protections than anything else. That's why I feel like it's better to buy a house if you can afford it than renting. Especially now, though, because I'm seeing apartments that are 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms for $1,800. And there are houses or condos as well that you can own for the same price. So it's what's the difference between renting and buying something that you can afford for the same price? There's no difference. There is a difference, and that is that you will own it, and you have a little bit more protections than renting an apartment. So that's why one of the reasons why we bought a house. And here's another thing that people tell me because of buying the house. They're like, oh, well, your house is going to lose value if the market crashes, and I'm going to be able to afford a cheaper house than you. And I'm like, yes, that is true. My house is going to lose value. I totally get it. And when we bought this house, we knew that, because it happens all the fucking time when the market crashes. It happened in 2008. My house is gonna lose value, but it's not gonna lose hundreds of thousands of dollars. Like we bought a house. This house was cheap. It's a trailer home, so it wasn't that expensive. So even if it lose value, I don't lose that much. Instead, like somebody that bought a $500,000 house, and then the market crashes, and then they lose like $200,000-300,000 of value. That's a lot because you still have to make those payments. You still have to make the payments unless you can get like a modification or anything like that. So it's very important that you do all your research when you buy a house. But anyway, so when they tell me that my house is going to lose value, I'm like, yes, it's going to lose value, and that is totally fine. But when they say that they're gonna buy a cheaper house than me, that's when I have to explain to them, because of the knowledge that I acquire working for this other company, that even though the housing market is gonna crash and there's gonna be cheap houses, probably they're gonna sell them as short sales and they're gonna go for way lower, the bank is not gonna lend just to anybody. You're gonna have to provide good credit history. You're gonna have to provide a big down payment, because this is what happened in 2008. So it's not gonna be as easy for a while. So when I see people telling me that, or when I hear people telling me that, I'm like, you don't understand what could happen if the market crashes. It's not like they're gonna sell every single house to anybody that can afford it, because not everybody will be able to afford it. And the bank is not going to want to lose money and just lend money all over again for a house that is not going to have a lot of value. So that's one thing that I tell people, like, don't be so careless about thinking like you can afford a house once the market crashes, because it's not going to be that easy. That's one of the things. So that's why when you buy a house, you have to do your research. You have to do your research as to what's on your budget, how much you can afford, how much you can spend, how much you can put towards repairs, things like that. So it is very important, and that's why I want to do this episode, because I learned this the hard way. I thought it was gonna be easier, but it hasn't. And when you buy a house, get a good realtor. Don't get just somebody that thinks they're a good realtor. Get a good realtor. Ask them questions. Ask them so many fucking questions that they're gonna get annoyed. That's what we did, my wife and I. We asked so many questions to realtors. 2 of them walked away from us, literally. And the one that ended up helping us by getting this house was fucking good. She was fucking good. Like, she was like determined to get the house. She did her job. Like, I was like, damn, she is good. So you have to get a good realtor that will answer all of the questions that you have. If you ask a question about the mortgage or about the seller or anything like that, and they don't know and they don't want to do the research, walk away. Cancel that contract. You have to do your own research, and you have to get a good realtor, because without a good realtor, what happens, and this is what happened in 2008, and I've seen it now, is that they take advantage of people. They take advantage. They're like, oh, this is going to be the house for you. If you don't buy this house right now, you're going to lose out. You're going to miss out. All of these things are going to happen. So don't let your realtor put pressure on you. That's the main thing. A good realtor is not going to put pressure on you to buy the house. So that's actually pretty important. And another thing that I learned about buying a house is that you have to do your due diligence. You have to read every single paper that's given to you in regards to the mortgage, like the real estate purchase contract, like the actual deed, like everything that you have to sign. You have to read it. Even though it may be like 50 pages, you might as well just hire somebody to read it to you and give you and tell you exactly what it means, because if you don't, you might be signing something that you may not even understand. Like, this is what happened to us with the seller. So because the price kept going down, due to the bank and their decision, which was fine to us, for us. I mean, the seller didn't want to do it. What happened is that they had to adjust or amend the actual contract. Well, when you do that and you sign it, if you want anything else to be changed, you have to tell the realtor that you want those things to be changed. Well, the seller was all like, when we first started buying the house, they're like, oh, we'll pay for the home warranty, right? For 1 year. We were excited about that. That's how they sold us the house. They're like, we're gonna give you a 1 year home warranty. And they agreed to it. They actually put it in the contract. They signed it. We signed it. We were okay. Well, the bank was all like, no, we're not gonna pay that price. And then what's gonna happen is that we had to change the price. Or what happened is that we had to change the price. So we amended the real estate purchase contract so many times that the actual seller thought that they removed that condition that they were going to buy the home warranty. Well, they didn't, because they didn't read the whole fucking thing. So they didn't want to buy the home warranty in the end, once everything was signed, once the payment had gone through. And that was another issue with them, because they were like, no, we're not gonna buy it. We lowered the price $12,000. And we were like, well, that's a fucking problem for you, because guess what? It's in the contract. So after going back and forth, they decided to buy it, and we got the home warranty and everything. So that's one thing that I don't want that to happen to you. Like, that's why you have to read everything. If you're a seller, read it. If you're a buyer, read the whole thing. That way you don't miss out on anything. Because if you miss the little thing, like the most insignificant thing, that could be a big thing later in the future after you close down the sale. And another thing that we did when we bought this house, and that's why I tell people, like, we bought this house we bought this house thinking rationally. We didn't buy this house out of emotion. We didn't say like, this wasn't the first house that we saw. We saw multiple houses, and I'll share this story with you. When we were looking at houses, my wife saw another house that she liked, but I didn't like it. She was like excited about the other house. She's like, I want it, that's my house. And I'm like, nope, I don't like it. She was pissed at me. She was mad at me. She was all like, why don't you like that house? Like, I love it. And I'm like, nope, let's look at other houses. We sat down, we had a conversation. We're like, leave emotion out of this, and let's look at other houses. Then we found the house that we decided to buy. She loved it even more, and I was like, see, you have to look at all the houses that you have seen online in the situation, right? But in your case, you may have to see multiple houses to see exactly which one you like. Then you can compare it, but never buy out of emotion. Because if you buy out of emotion, you're going to go with the first one. Let's be honest. If you want to get out of your lease, let's say you're renting, you want to get out of your lease, or you just want to tell your landlords to fuck off, you're going to be like, fuck you, I'm going to buy a house and whatever. And then you find a house. It may not be the perfect house for you, but you find a house, you buy it, and then it has other problems because you didn't do your due diligence. You didn't check the prices correctly. You didn't do your budget. You didn't do all of this. You just went out of emotion, and then now you're struggling. And I'm not criticizing anybody, because I saw this a lot while I was working for the mortgage service. So that's why I'm saying it. Like, a lot of people do this. And just last year or at the beginning of this year, that's exactly what was happening. That's why the housing market was so high or so hot, because people were buying out of emotion. They're like, I like this house. They didn't even see it inside. They didn't even do the research. They will buy the house, and then they had problems. That's one of the things that I told my wife, like, we're gonna avoid that. We're not gonna buy out of emotion. We're actually going to do it the right way. And that's what I want from you. Do it the right way. If you can buy a house, if you can afford it, if you can actually enjoy being in the house without any stress of making payments towards the house or paying your bills, then do it. But you have to do a budget. You have to do so many things. You guys have to talk about it. And that's why when people say like, oh, you guys made a mistake, I'm like, no, we didn't. We went through this process to buy this house so we could actually be able to buy it and not have any regrets, because me and my wife don't regret buying this house. We sat down day after day after day. We read the contracts, we read everything, we did our research, we did our budget, we did everything that we could, so right now we can actually enjoy living in our house. And that's what I want from you, because renting is getting expensive. It's so fucking expensive right now. Like, rents are gonna go higher and higher. They're not gonna go down. That's one of the things. So if you can buy the house, do it. If you can't, but you still can't afford rent, then do it. Don't jump into something that's gonna get you into more debt or more stress. It's not worth it. Let me tell you, it's not worth it, because like I said, I've seen it. I have seen it. People buy a house out of emotion. They're like, I just want a house to live in, and then there's still more stress because they still have to pay their bills. They still have to pay the mortgage now, so they get all stressed. But that's pretty much what I wanted to share in today's episode with you guys. I hope you guys are enjoying this episode. Thank you for everything. Thank you for the growth. Thank you for the shares, the likes, and everything. And don't forget to share, like, and subscribe. We are on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. And if you want to DM me on social media, you can, or you can email me at bjordanthebadinfluence@gmail.com. And I'll leave you with my final thoughts. Anything that you do, including buying a house, do it for you. Something that's gonna bring you happiness, peace, whatever you're looking for. And don't care about what anybody else says. If they say like, oh, you made a mistake, like, yeah, but it's gonna be my mistake and I'm gonna deal with it. And that's pretty much it. So, have a great day.